We went through talent review and we talked about elevating our talent. We heard from the merchants around how they're elevating the brands, elevating the conditions of our stores and how they look. I wrote it really big on my journal, and I said, that's the one message I got to get back to my team. It's one of the biggest skill sets that people have to have in off-price is being agile and adapting to whatever is put in front of you. I had a leader a long time ago that kind of had a phrase R before T, and it was just stood for relationship before task. For me, in my role, when I'm going out visiting, I always tell people I visit people, I don't visit stores. And I think that's the piece that I've learned from all the practices, is just to keep self-examining, like, okay, why am I feeling this way right now? And look, I think sometimes it might not make sense then, but maybe 2 years from now it does. And like, oh, you know what? That situation happened. That's why.
But it's awesome to have you here representing our store team today. So you want to maybe just start off with a quick intro?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Eric Robinson. I'm a regional director out in the field. I cover the southeast states, kind of mostly Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina. And that's kind of from a geography standpoint. June will be 5 years for me with Bealls, so looking forward to that mark. I've only ever worked off-price. I'll kind of go a little bit, I guess, into some of my past. Prior to joining Bealls, I spent 27 years with TJ Maxx. I started there as a part-time associate. Didn't think retail was going to be my long-time career, probably like most, right? But fell in love with it. Did a lot of stuff on the store side, and then went into loss prevention. I spent about 11 years in the loss prevention side with them, working my way up, just from a store detective to a district LP manager. And then really wanted to get back to the store side. The people's kind of the passion part. And I had a great opportunity to switch over, actually in the same district I was in as a district LP manager, and become a DM with them. And I should backtrack a little bit, I guess. I started with the TJ side. They had a division called AJ Wright that they started as a growth company, and I went there for about 8 years. So 4 as a DLPM and 4 as a DM. When they shut that division down, I moved from Virginia to Atlanta area as a DM with TJ's, and did that for another 14 years, something like that. But and then I think now found my final home in Bealls, and pretty excited. So
that's cool.
But yeah, off-price it's what I know, it's what I love.
Yep. So in terms of your loss prevention experience there, yep, was it any crazy stories that you can share with us?
Oh yeah, there's a lot, because back then it was still okay to
right.
use a little bit of force, right?
Yeah.
I probably my craziest one was, and this was even before loss prevention had a lot of cameras. So we had the lookout towers, and I was working in this one store, and there was a lady that kept stealing dresses from us. Well, the unique part was she was in a wheelchair. And
so you got physical.
Well, I ended up, it's kind of, she would wheel into the dress racks. They're taller. Yeah. She would steal. Well, I finally had enough to be able to apprehend her. Okay. And we got into the vestibule, and she had exited the store, and she started beating me with her purse.
Really? Huh.
And of course, people start looking, and I guess luckily there wasn't a lot of camera phones back then. So I did have to handcuff her to her wheelchair. And it was just awkward to wheel her back in like that, because nobody knows, right? They all just assume I'm being the bad guy. And
sure.
So that was like one of the most memorable ones. I mean, obviously in loss prevention, there's a lot of good things. And I was young, the adrenaline would run, and it was a fun time. But now you look back, and sometimes it's kind of scary.
Kind of scary, yeah.
I was plain clothes, going out and just asking somebody to come in, not knowing if they had a weapon or any of that stuff.
Right.
And, it was great. It was a great experience, because you really got to understand the business, and you really got to connect with people and understand why, right? Because we would go in, and especially with our associates that would steal, and you would do an interview on them and try to figure out why, and so you could try to prevent it from the future and happening, but yet you still had to stay very objective, because naturally you could feel sorry for somebody, but yet you still had to base things on facts, right? And
Right.
just like we would do nowadays with loss prevention. So, yeah, I probably still have a few scars on my body. I know there's one on my elbow. One time I did I lost my big toe nail.
Really?
I lived in Virginia Beach at the time, and I remember I was at the beach earlier, and I didn't have time to go home and change my shoes. And so I was wearing flip-flops, and I went out to apprehend somebody, and they're pushing out the door, and I'm pulling on the door, and I never realized my foot was underneath the door.
Oh my gosh.
And so I didn't even, I was like, well, it's my fault. I didn't claim workman's comp or any of that stuff, but that was very painful. Actually, I was
Yeah.
out of work for like a week because your big toenail, you don't realize how valuable that is.
Wait, was it your toenail or
Toenail.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
okay,
no,
got it.
not
I thought
my
your
big
whole
toe.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, that would have been really bad.
That would have
but-
been really bad. Yeah. Okay. So a week I get. I'm like, wow, you are a martyr coming
Oh,
back in
yeah,
a week with 9
exactly.
toes.
That would be good.
Yeah.
That would really mess up your balance,
Yeah,
probably.
no doubt. But yeah, well, good. So yeah, I know there's some crazy stories from the past with
Yep.
loss prevention from retail across America, and it just does seem like now we're in a much better place. Now we
Yeah.
have a better way to deal with it, and we just, I mean, honestly, the less aggressive the approach and protecting our people more than
Yep.
more than our clothing is obviously what's infinitely more important. So I think that some of the changes that have been made with the way that retailers handle
Yeah.
theft has been very positive.
Yeah, and look, I was so amazed when I came here and to see really how far our loss prevention has advanced, and especially with SOC and like what a better approach that is, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes people will say, oh, we should be sending these people to jail and court, and they don't realize like how much payroll we would be spending going to court. Because I remember back in the day, like sometimes I would spend multiple days, just all day in court, where I could be in the store protecting the assets and all of that. So it's definitely evolved, and but I think for the right reasons.
Yeah. So you're here this week for what reason? Update everybody on why you're here.
Yeah, so this was one of our regional director retreats or meetings. We did talent review, and we typically come in 3 times a year. January, we'll do a talent review as well, and same with June. And then September, again, we'll come back and we'll really kind of getting really prepped for the holiday season and make sure we're strategizing. And it's not just about us kind of getting in a room and chatting, but the big thing, we get to meet with corporate partners and, let our voices be heard, maybe share some pain points here or there. And, but, and then again, we're level setting and on the talent and making sure that we're doing what's right for the business and we're moving the business in the right direction. So it's always great. And then I say it's always great to see my friends. Those are my peers. I call them my friends, right? And because we don't get to see each other. We're spread out. There's 6 regionals, throughout the company, and so you don't get to interact with them in person, but a couple times a year. But so yeah, it was a great day. A couple of them had to get a little delayed with the winter weather coming in, but everybody was able to make it ultimately. And yeah, we just wrapped up today around 12:30.
Nice. Yeah, that's great. It's a great group of people. It's a great culture that you guys have as a team. So I know it's always nice when you guys get together, and when I can join you and come and talk to you as well, like we were able to do this week, was a lot of fun. So what were your big takeaways from the week?
Interesting. I'll because we just talked, with Gil and around, what was our walk away? And I left it at one word, and that was elevate. It was interesting because you kind of started off Monday, and we were talking about that. We went through talent review, and we talked about elevating our talent. We heard from the merchants around how they're elevating the brands. So elevating the conditions of our stores and how they look. So I wrote it really big on my journal, and I said, that's the one message I got to get back to my team, and make sure that whatever we do, we continue to try to elevate, and that's all we can ask. Look, the merchants have done a phenomenal job over the last couple of years. Like I said, when I joined 5 years ago, there's so many more brands that we have, and national brands and brands that we can really compete with. We we talked on Monday, we have to, we got to get those guests in there to see it. And then when they get in there, that's our job, right? We have to elevate that guest experience. And I think already we're better than a lot out there. And, we can continue to improve that piece. But we want to make it the best experience for those guests, but you got to have the product too. They're in to shop,
Yep.
right? And we can be as nice as we want to be, but if they don't have that product, well, then it's not really worth coming back for, right? So I'm excited, and we were even talking about some strategy today with the merchants. So the GMMs came in along with Lisa, and we were even talking about just our metro markets and what we could do different there. And they're getting a lot of contemporary brands in. And I really, really believe that that's where we can compete in those metro markets. So there were some good takeaways. I think they walked away with that. And and I think, you did say, I mean, we're a great group of people. We continue to elevate the talent, but it's kind of interesting. Each day when I would go back to the hotel and I would debrief, and you think about the different leaders, because we really interact with almost all the SVPs, and what a dynamic group, right? And it's really cool. But they don't walk in the room like they're an SVP. They walk in like they're just a normal human being, just like us. And
They are.
Their ears are open, and they're taking notes, and they go back, and a lot of them are great. They'll follow up the next time we're in and say, "Hey, this is what we did since the last time we met with you," and it's it's one big family, right? So
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, you said two words that jumped out to me, of course, and no pressure, but you're speaking for the entire store base when I
Okay.
ask you this question. You said the words pain points.
Yep.
And we always like to hear what it is that we could be doing better to support the stores. So, what are some of those things that you think right now are opportunities for improvement at the store level that the corporate office could help you guys with?
Yeah. So some of the things we shared, I think when we're talking about merchandise and those components, being at the consistency level, right? And the flow of goods, it's a challenge in off price. Like I said, I've been around off price my whole career. So, sometimes you're chasing goods and I think it's evolved, since I first started, where it's not really just closeouts or any of those things, right? And, but, and as we continue to grow, keeping up with that pace and making sure that we have that steady flow. And look, I think the other piece is how do we, and this is not just even for corporate, this is for all of us, is how do we close that gap, right? And the different volumes of stores. And I think that'll make it easier for the merchants and the planning and allocation teams to better flow those goods, because it's tough, right? Because, when in off price, you're so based on turns, right? And you want to make sure that you're turning the good and not taking the markdown on it. And so I think we've talked through that, and that's where we provided some feedback on just how do we get that consistency piece, and I like we talked even on Monday, like how do we make sure that we elevate the look of our stores inside, and especially the stuff that we can control, but yeah, I think that there's that, and we've done a really good job, I think, with the transportation side of saving a lot of money, for the company, and kind of getting away from the pool points. And so there's some learning curves there, and I think one of the things I was sharing was, how do we even teach the stores better how to schedule, right? Because now trucks, they're driving further to get to us, but yet we're getting the merchandise faster. And so I think it's those pieces of continuing to work with our corporate partners around. Again, it's just that whole flow. So it's with transportation, but it's also P&A, and it's all that. And the more we can provide feedback and those kind of things, I think it'll continue to get better. And look, it'll never be perfect. It's because as the business grows, and I think AI gets involved, and so especially in those components in their world, it'll continue to to be seamless.
Yeah, it should get better and better for sure.
Yep.
And obviously, when we're talking about flow, we're talking about receipt flow, merchandise flow to the store, and of course, I mean, the stores are getting consistent trucks, hopefully,
Yep.
for the most part. But within those trucks, what is the merchandise that we're giving and getting, and is it the appropriate merchandise? Is the seasonality appropriate by location? A lot of new stores coming on board in the cold zone, and so
Yep.
I think we're still kind of, merchants and planners are still kind of learning how to allocate goods based on seasonality, based on all these new markets that we're in. But it really feels like to me, and we talked about this week, that one of the biggest opportunities that we have as a company is really that productivity per foot metric. Yep. And we can look at that in terms of sales. We can look at that in terms of margin. I don't think it really matters. But I think our biggest single opportunity is just that, and every individual in the company can play a part in really driving that number home and driving that forward and making a difference in that number. And it definitely feels like we need to be able to compete more effectively with our primary competitors.
Yep.
And in order to do that, we need flow, and we need to remain in stock by category and key item.
Yep.
And it's difficult sometimes when we get into stores that are low volume stores, because receipts get cut back, and you might have a competitor come into a new market and sales might drop, and then receipts get cut back further. And so that can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, of course, and so it's really of just complete utmost importance that we're able to figure out ways to stay in stock when we are up against big
Yep.
national competitors like that, because TJ's is going to be able to, you're going to be able to find the frying pan that you want, and the deck pillow that you want, and the puffy blanket that you want. These are items that we might, if we cut back receipts, we might be out of those. But what we're doing is really walking customers from our store to our competitor across the street, because they don't want to have to go to multiple stores for everything. They want a one-stop shop. And so I really feel you with this, and I think that this is a big part of the opportunity that we have as a company from a planning and allocation standpoint, and from a merchandising standpoint, is to just, on the location by location level, do a much better job at being in stock by key categories and by key items, and having all the merchants really kind of go out and identify, okay, these are the ones we've got to be in stock. We're going to have to recognize that we're going to operate with a lower gross margin rate, and we're going to take more markdowns, and that's going to be okay because it's a traffic play, and because it's going to be a long-term way that we can compete in metro markets and compete when competition comes into our core markets. So it's one of those things that, as I get ready for these February, as I begin to kind of rally the team behind our go forward mission, and with the Bealls Florida thing, it seems like we're coming up on a soft landing on that, and we're going to be good there. And so kind of looking forward to the future. The next great opportunity that we have as an organization is really that opportunity to compete directly with these guys, and in markets, and not have our volume really drop when they come into our markets. Right. And so it's going to be an all hands on deck kind of a strategy of improvement of productivity. And everybody can contribute to that. And that's the exciting part. I mean, stores can contribute to that by creating a great culture within the store. We can, as you said, offer a much better shopping experience than what you're going to find in, a Ross when you're greeted by a security guard, or, or whatever. It's, we can offer just a fantastic shopping experience, and we can do that by being our genuine self, and by connecting with the guest and not pushing them to buy an extra unit, or to, that's not authentic. Sign up for a credit card, or sign up for a credit card, or whatever. No, it's about making their experience as joyful as possible, and really having them remember that experience and remember that connection and want to come back and shop with us. So, and that's just one component of it. That's, a big part of the store component. Of course, you got to be sized, and, you've got to be, you got to be merchandised well, and your fitting rooms have got to be cleaned, and the back stock has to come out. I get like, there's
Yeah.
jobs that we have to do as well, but that moment of interaction that every store associate gets to have with a guest is just magical in terms
Yep.
of the ability to drive repeat sales and grow productivity, grow top line.
Yeah, I've always said that the guest doesn't care what's in your back room in that moment,
Yeah.
right? They care about that interaction. They care about their experience. And you're right. We have to still have it out because that is part of that experience, right? If it's not there and they're looking for it. But I want to go back a little bit. I think on some of the things you were talking about with like being in stock a little, I think it's also important. And I think I shared it maybe with the merchants today, but the term I always heard from my as long as I've been in off price was weatherproofing our stores, right? So how do you keep drawing those guests in when the weather's unseasonable, right? So it's like this week a little bit, right? And as you look at those things like the hard lines and beauty, is a big draw to say, okay, well, we can still keep doing business. So yeah, I think it's a big one, and it's a big task, I know, for the merchants, and God bless them for all that they do. I learned a lot more from the merchants when I was going through the ERB stuff this year, and that experience is big, and I really appreciate. Gosh, it might have been a couple of years now, right? That we changed our talk track and we said we want our cashiers just to be authentic up front.
Right.
We don't want to, why force somebody to get a credit card and add more debt to them or whatever the reason. And that was a big reason, why I landed here at Bealls. Obviously, but that's part of that culture, right? When you're in an environment where you feel like credit card's more important than sales, it's probably not right.
Right.
Right. So, and that's what I think we really keep trying to preach. And when we hire, people to work in our store, we just want you to be your authentic self and go up there and just have a conversation. Oh, by the way, you still got to do all the stuff, right? You still got to ring the transactions the correct way.
Sure.
And which, by the way, goes to that productivity. Because there's a balance, right? Because if there's a line, we don't want them spending 20 minutes talking to that guest. But call a backup, but it's special. You hear it when you go into all these different stores. Let me tell you about this guest, and this is her name, and this is how many times she comes here a week, and there's lots of times we're out traveling in the stores, and a guest comes up to us and says, we just love it here, right? And you just feel like, okay, we're doing our job, right?
Yeah,
and this is rewarding. This is good. Yeah. So.
Yep. Making people happy.
Yep.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. That's fantastic. So any other big takeaways from the week this week?
Yeah, I think, it was really just I think the conversation around, our people side of it, right? It just, it was kind of interesting, I think, and we just talked about this as a group, and I don't remember. I think maybe it was Brandon that brought it up, but there was a flow this week between all the different corporate partners, where it seems like this, the dots are all connecting, and they're all in sync, right? So you heard similar messages from different groups, whether it was logistics, whether it was real estate, whether it was, marketing, all the different components. They all seem to tie together. And it kind of stood out to us that, like, okay, all the stars are starting to align, right? And with that messaging piece, and I think that goes credit to the SVPs and as they trickle that piece down as well. But we're all kind of going after the right piece. We're on the right mission, and that stood out. I think it was a great call out, and it just made. It didn't seem like it was like, oh, all right, we got another corporate partner. Let's shift gears. Let me turn this side of the brain off so I can turn that side on. But yet it kind of just flowed right through. So it was pretty exciting. And you always come back, from these kind of meetings like energized, right? And like, all right, well, I need to go have a meeting now with my team, right? And I want to, let's start getting these things implemented and stuff. So, I would say that was the other big component versus, again, there are lots of small learnings and lots of takeaways and stuff. But we're all going down the same path right now, not different paths.
Right. Right. Yeah, it does feel very, very unified.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. What if I was a store manager out, or what do you think that your store managers would want me to ask you right now in this moment? What because you've got probably a lot of stores that are
Yep.
that are going to be watching this, and so
I bet.
I want to make sure that we're talking about any content, anything that might be on their minds, and make sure that we give them a fair conversation here. So what do you think that they would want us to be discussing?
Yeah, I think, from the store side, we've put a lot of structure, I would say, over the last year. And I don't want to say we've implemented a lot because we were shooting for the same stuff. Just we didn't have a lot of structure around certain things, like whether it's our MOD program to really be able to help validate that is our guest experience working, is our truck process working. And so I think speaking very candid, I think that there was times where maybe some people felt very overwhelmed because it might have felt like, oh, they're implementing a lot. They got this and they got that. But all things were to make us better. And in a lot of cases, we actually simplified a lot of things, and we tried to, take certain things off their plate if it was too much work. And so I would say, they're probably anticipating, okay, what's next, right? And so, if you were to say like, all right, well, did he walk away from this meeting of what's the next thing we're going to implement? There's not really anything, right? We're one of the biggest things that they've been asking for is, or I guess one of the other big switches, we started doing hang in stores.
Right.
Great cost saving. I actually said that from day one when I came was, why are we sending hangers? And now I'm having to ship hangers back, and I had some locations where we were throwing hangers away.
The previous leadership just was very headstrong against
it was
that.
crazy.
And, there was, so we kind of, okay.
Yeah. Look, and by the way, there was a mindset too, I think even within my stores that, oh, well, now this is going to take us longer. And we would just go out and explain to say, no, it's actually going to be faster because, like the little size nubs they're already on the hangers for most of the hangers. Like that's one of the hardest things, like to put a hanger on something that's 1 second. Right.
Yeah.
But
and the garments are going to sometimes come with the hangers that have already fallen out, and you're putting them back on
exactly.
anyway.
And sometimes you had to take the hanger off just to put the sensor tag on.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
now I'm putting it on. We just paid somebody in the DC to put the hanger on.
Right. So we're shipping plastic and extra weight and extra space,
and now we can fit more in a box. We can fit more in a truck, right?
Which is huge, huge savings.
It was a no-brainer, and but I heard the same thing. They were like, nope, this is the way we're going to do it, and I said, okay. But when we did that, we had already had a process the old way. So we are working now with stores, and we're piloting and testing with multiple stores with the store leaders. They should be the ones giving us the feedback of what does Fast to Floor 2.0 look like. So I think that's really going to be the big thing. And they all want it, and we're going to deliver that to them. And it will make us more efficient. It's a big part of the job. I try to lighten it up sometimes when I'm in a back room and they're working hard, and I say, well, we're in the business to sell stuff, and in order to sell stuff, you got to get stuff, and it all comes through that back room, right? So, there's amazing people out there in the stores that really, they don't, they might get a average truck today, but all of a sudden freight's coming heavy and they're getting a big truck, but they just pile right through it. And we make adjustments on the fly. I think it's one of the biggest skill sets that people have to have in off-price is being agile, right? And adapting to whatever is put in front of you. So, but yeah, I think that would be the biggest thing. And the rest of it's just helping people be, better at what they do, and being there to support them. It's interesting. I always, for me in my role, when I'm going out visiting, I always tell people I visit people. I don't visit stores. The DMs are in there, and they get into the weeds a little bit more. But that's the same thing. I want to go in and hear, what are your pain points? What are you happy with? What aren't you happy with? What can I do? I have to be that voice that screams back to corporate and says, this isn't working for us, or this is going great, and go into a store and they're like, oh, well, I haven't had my phones in 2 months. Oh, okay.
Let us know. Yeah.
Let me call. And then it happened not too long ago. And I mean, it was fixed by the next morning with a quick phone call to Race and his team. And that's it. Right. So, yeah, I think that's the biggest piece I would think that they would want to know is like, what's next. Right. And it's like, it's not a lot next.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to be introducing this productivity conversation, and I think that there are going to be some divisions that have that are going to have to implement some changes in order to make us better and stronger.
Yep.
And we're going to be looking at transportation and kind of understanding the cost of what will it cost us for more deliveries to stores and smaller deliveries, more frequent deliveries, because there's a cost benefit to that, and I don't think we've done that math in a while. From a planning and allocation point, what is the cost of the markdown going to be if we're going to be increasing our inventory and being in stock on key items, and key categories? What is the cost in footwear and in home as we continue to elevate the product assortment there? But all of these things are obviously designed to enhance productivity, and but that will be it's not new. It's not like a new push. It's not a new initiative. Productivity has always been an initiative, but we've just never really been able to crack it. We've gotten better. We ripped out a bunch of inventory 12 years ago, and all that. Our turns improved, and we got healthier. But we haven't really been able to permanently crack this productivity issue as it relates to our sales compared to competition. And so that's going to be a big conversation go forward. And again, it's always been there, but now it's just going to be packaged a little bit differently with specific direction for specific divisions on how they can contribute. And everybody's going to have a role because everybody can drive sales. So, that's going to be I think a very clear message coming up at the February town hall. And it's a message I'm going to deliver to the boards in February. So I'm excited about that. But I guess when you look at the kind of the current state of things out there and what's happening, there's always so much craziness going on in the world, and it's like, you never know what's happening with an individual, and what somebody might be going through at any given time. And you work with so many people, thousands of people. And so I guess, like, how do you kind of approach your interactions with people, knowing that the world is, it's in chaos right now, and at any given time, somebody can be dealing with things that, we don't even know what's going on in their life. So how do you, does that, you feel what I'm saying?
No, I gotcha. Yeah. It's, actually, to me, it's the fun part of my job. I think it's not probably the right word to use, but I do say you got to be nosy a little bit, right? And what I just mean by that is you just have to ask questions and just have conversations. I had a leader a long time ago that kind of had a phrase R before T, and that was just stood for relationship before task, right? So just, have a conversation with somebody. By the way, they're not going to always tell you they're having a rough time.
Right.
But you can pick up on clues. And I feel like for myself, going back to my loss prevention days, when you learn to really read body language,
Sure, yeah.
that is so helpful.
I'm always uncomfortable around you loss prevention
Yeah.
people. Yeah, am I being micro analyzed
Yeah,
here?
yeah. Next thing you know, you're going to be confessing your whole world, right?
Yes, right, exactly.
Yeah, but you have to kind of look for those signs and signals. You got to read their body language. The biggest thing is you have to just be a listener. And I'll tell you, at one point in time, I remember I was working on deep listening, as a CDP, IDP function. And even back then we didn't even talk about being in the present moment, right? Like, but now it's like, oh, that's really what that's about,
what it was,
right?
yeah.
And so the people will appreciate you, and I think it goes back to the question you asked earlier about what would the team want you to ask, right? And being realistic with people, I think is also important to say, okay, well, yeah, this, maybe you're not happy with that result, but that result's the result, right? And, what do you think you can do? What did you learn from that, right? And what do you want to do? And when you just start having dialogue instead of just telling people, this is what you got to do, and I need you to do this. And I think, when you talk about productivity, like, for us in the store specifically, the messaging is going to be really important. Because it can turn to managing versus just being their leader, right? And but it's important, right? Because everything we do, and payroll is the biggest expense. And but yeah, I feel good when I walk away from somebody that felt comfortable to share stuff. And sometimes I won't go into the specific details, but I just had something happen where it was a really weird incident we had happen with one of our store managers. And, I read through the email and I call the DM and I'm like, did we ask if this person's ever had something like this happen to them before? And they're like, no, let me find out. And sure enough, they had. And right, it's kind of a little bit of that PTSD stuff, right? And I'm like, okay, well, we got to have some empathy around that, right? Instead of just saying, well, did you break policy? Did you not break policy? Let's find out they're doing right first, and then we can kind of deal with what we need to deal with, right? So, and that, I think that goes back to that, just being a good observer, listening really intently, like, what do they want you to know? What don't they want you to know? It's interesting. You said Monday how you always thought you were an introvert. And I've always said that, and it's got me thinking now, because outside of work, I don't tend to just go up to people. I don't tend to talk. But at work, when I tell people, oh, I'm naturally an introvert, they're like, no, you're not. You'll just go up and start talking to people. And that's why I said I visit people in stores. I don't really visit the store. And by the way, when you just have conversations, you'll learn a whole lot about what's going on in a store. And especially when you talk to just associates, and they're going to just be truthful to you. It is I think one of the most fun parts of the job. And look, sometimes it's tough, and sometimes I might not know how to respond or how to help them, but let me try to figure it out. And that's what will make me better as a person as well. I just learned how to help somebody through this issue that they might have.
Yep.
And I think that's where our teams appreciate, I think, that, right? And I think I said about being honest. Last year we kind of did a virtual store manager conference because we're going to start getting back in person. And I told I think the store manager job is the hardest job, and especially in the store side.
Yes.
It's absolutely the hardest job.
I agree. It's the hardest job I've done.
Yeah.
I mean, and I've done every job. I've done almost every job. It's very, very challenging.
And I just was simple, and I said to them, I'm like, you guys are the strategic, or the link from strategy at corporate to execution in the store. So how you're able to do that, how you're able to get your team motivated and inspired, they do a phenomenal job with that,
Yep.
right? And because they weren't the ones that created the strategy, some have some input and things like that, But they take that strategy and they just make it happen. So, but it doesn't happen unless you can build great relationships with the people you're working with. Because you have to motivate, you have to inspire people, because otherwise they're not going to give you 100%.
Yeah. And a great way to inspire is just being authentic.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, just being yourself and just not role playing or acting and, just show up and be Eric, that's what people like.
And that's where it kind of goes. Like for me, I feel like my authentic self is just going to be transparent, right? Like I'm not going to sugarcoat something. I'm not going to scream at somebody. That's not my style. I don't want to yell. Right. And so, but why wouldn't I want to be open to that person and tell them, here's what I think you're great at, and here's what I think you want to improve on. And that's where I think then they realize, to your point, oh, he's just being authentic with me. He's just being transparent. He's being,
I'm not in trouble.
Yeah.
We're just talking. Yeah.
Yeah. Because we've all gotten feedback.
Yep.
And some feedback's hard to swallow.
Yep.
But you get better at it. Right?
I have 10 bosses.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
And a family and a wife.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 11 plus the kids. No, but the board, I mean, it's a lot. It's you get everybody gets feedback, man, and it's helpful, and we can resist it or we can grow from it.
Yeah.
And we can say, hey, this is that person's perspective, and it was offered to me so I can learn. And I don't have to agree with it necessarily. I can change something. I can hold on to something, but I need to understand the consequences of holding on to something and continuing to do something that is being viewed, in a way that is not maximizing the results that we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting dynamic, but I think we try to, or at least the good leaders, or the effective leaders rather, within the organization, do a really nice job at being transparent and open, without being, without being closed down or too much of, this is the right way and you're not doing this the right way and this is how you do it.
Yeah.
It's more like, okay, well, this is what I'm seeing. And, here's, I want you to consider doing this. And we think it's going to be better for the company, and, have that conversation and try to be open to hearing why is it happening a different way, and
Well, that's where most people go bad with it, is they shut down.
Yep.
Right. And then they actually stop listening to the feedback. And they don't ask questions of the why. Right. And I remember early when I started here, and I remember even some meetings, like Chris Collins would pull me out in the hallway and be like, let me just give you this feedback. And I would just say, okay, well, help me understand where you're coming from with it. Like what, or how will I benefit from it? Right. Instead of, like, you could have just gave me that and I could have said, okay, good, I'm good with it. But if I don't understand it, well, I can't do anything with it.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's why, again, I tell people you have to ask lots of questions. It's funny. I even here when I first started, because newer, and I was used to being the long-term person, right, in the company, and I thought, my peers are probably tired of me asking questions, because I ask a lot of questions. They will tell you that. But then it's kind of, well, then I'm not, if I'm not asking the questions, then am I really my authentic self, right? And so I kind of went back after we were reading some of the books, and I'm like, I'm just going to ask questions.
Good.
And I'm not worried about what they think. And by the way, probably the questions I'm asking are the ones they want to ask, or maybe they hadn't thought of, or whatever. But I guess it's about clarity, right?
Yeah.
It's just, I just want to understand why, and might not always agree with it, but at least I know why.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You mentioned transparency. You mentioned presence. So you mentioned 2 out of the practices so far out of the 9. So how have those? And I want you to be completely honest with me, right? I don't, no sugarcoating.
I don't sugarcoat.
Just don't say anything that isn't exactly how you feel. What have been the what kind of impact has that made with you? What changes have you made, if any? Have they impacted your life in any meaningful way?
Yeah. So very candidly, I think in the beginning, when the first couple books were introduced, that was The Power Now and The New Earth. That was I kind of started to read. I'm not a big reader naturally, and I read in some awkward moments, and then I tend to. What I've learned now is I take advantage of online stuff, and I try to combine it, right, so it can make sense to me. But I wasn't bought in, right, and I was like, I don't know, and this sounds too good to be true, and I think I was sharing on Monday. What I appreciated most so far is that I've been able to learn it and practice it at my pace.
Right.
Not Bell's pace, not Matt's pace, not Gil, Chris, nobody's pace, right? If I didn't understand something, nobody kind of said, well, why aren't you keeping up, right? Because it was kind of like for me, very slow. And then I feel like over the last year and a half, it's kind of gone fast for me. Again, because I think I just needed to understand how it related. And I guess what I've now feel like with the practices is once I have that feeling, now it makes sense. And I can't even describe what the feeling is, right? But I think it's kind of, when I think about when I really understood acceptance, I related it to freedom, right? And it's kind of that, once you accept that it is what it is, right? Well, I'm free, right? Like I don't have to worry. I don't have to stress. Like, why did this happen or what's right? And so it happened, I think, naturally with different of the practices, right? So I think for me, the two big ones were acceptance and accountability. Excuse me. And, but again, it was just truly trying to understand that component, right? And even the word ego, right? Like,
what does that mean? I
mean, always growing up, he's got a big ego, he's big, tough, macho, right? And, he's cocky or whatever. Well, it's totally different, right? And so it was confusing, quite frankly, in the beginning. And so now as it's kind of evolved and you go back and maybe reread a book a second time or a third time, it starts making sense. I found a couple podcasts out there that focus on the mindset, that are sometimes shorter. And it's like, all of a sudden that was like, oh, they're talking about acceptance. Like, okay, I've read a whole bunch of books, but now it starts clicking. Right. And then you kind of figure out and I think in the beginning I was trying to figure it out as, how do I use this at work, and trying to think of it as a work function. But that's not what it's about, right? And naturally, it's going to help you, right? And be a better leader and be in that moment or whatever it is. So it's been a journey. I actually just, when was that? January, a couple weeks ago. For the first time, I have 7 district managers that report to me. We had a discussion about the practices.
Oh, cool.
I asked the team, do you want to do this at the next meeting? I wouldn't have been able to do that a year and a half ago. I wouldn't have felt comfortable.
Right.
And it was the same message. Like, you don't have to, believe in any of these and do any of these or whatever. But it was more about me sharing with them, here's my journey from it, right? And here's what I still feel like, I want to understand better. We added, presence and gratitude. And those are 2 that I'm learning more about, but need to practice more. The presence piece, of course, once I understood the whole regrets and anxiety piece behind it, it makes sense, right? And gratitude's been an interesting one, because I always felt it's interesting. When I first joined Bealls, you have to answer the phone by saying we're grateful for you calling Bealls at blah, blah, blah.
That was a rule here?
It wasn't a rule. Well, I guess it was kind of a rule. It wasn't in writing, right?
Okay.
But that's how I was trained. And, I was...
I just haven't heard that before.
And they were like...
Oh, that was the thing?
Okay.
Yeah.
At stores?
At stores.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We want to answer the phone. They were grateful for you calling Bealls at, Canton, Georgia or whatever, right? And... we even put it on our signature line, right? Okay. And it's kind of interesting because mine's still there, right? But
what years did we do this?
I joined in 21, so that was already in place. And I don't force it, right? And
Yeah.
I don't know how many stores even still do that, right? Because, but it was interesting, right?
Yeah.
And you know,
It's interesting. It just doesn't, if we're robotic,
yeah,
it's not authentic.
yep, exactly.
And so I would encourage people to just
Not, yeah,
be yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why I was like, I don't even know if they still do it because I don't tend to call, but it's something I got to ask,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think it was also, you know, we had kind of a great place to be and the different bulletin boards.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I think it all tied to that. And look, I think personally, I always kind of said, oh, you know, as I've been reflecting recently, when I think about being, well, what I was, when I thought what grateful was it's everything that benefited me. Right.
Sure.
And now I'm seeing that that's not what grateful is.
Right.
Right. And, you know, and, you know, I was telling the team, like, you know, let's use trucks, for example. And if, you know, this truck came and it's 800 cartons and, you know, it came a day late, well, I'm going to look at it and say, well, I'm grateful we're actually getting merchandise. I'm grateful I have a job to take the truck.
Right.
Right. And so now kind of looking at it in a different lens, it's making a little bit more sense. But you're right. It was kind of like, well, I just had it there. Like, was I really grateful every time I sent that email?
Right. Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, very, very interesting.
If you happen to be practicing gratitude at that moment, then you were grateful
Yep.
when you sent the email, you know,
Yep.
because it's a choice.
Yeah.
We can choose and we can practice gratitude or we can choose, you know, negativity if we want to, you know. I mean, I made a comment on a guest that I had on a podcast and was like, I was just very grateful that you flew across the country to come down and visit me. And somebody made a comment like, you know, it's not gratitude, you know, it's like, that's not real. You're just trying to, you know, what, and it's like, it's actually when it's a practice, like
Yeah.
it's like a choice to attempt to operate within a mindset of being thankful for the things that life gives me, then that's a choice that I'm making, and that's a real choice, and that's why it's a practice and not a value, you know. And I think that's where people kind of get like when it's a little bit different, I think, than people are used to thinking about or looking at, but it's it's something that yeah, it's just something that you can decide. Hey, I you know, and life will give you things that seem like they're quote unquote bad, you know, or something has gone wrong, but we can be grateful for those things too, you know, because those are the things that really allow us to kind of dig down deep within and find out, well, why is it, what is it about this thing that life gave me that I'm so against or that I'm so resistant towards, or why is this such a bad situation? And that's really a gift from life, to be able to learn more about yourself and to be able to grow and to be able to just understand more about, you know, what is it about my authenticity? What is it that I'm attached to, you know, that's causing me to not have acceptance and causing me to lose my accountability, you know? And that's kind of the three practices of authenticity, acceptance, accountability, and they're all very much tied together in a straight line correlation. And so, you know, if you can be grateful for the things that allow us to grow and be grateful for the things that we're given along the way, then you don't experience as much of that resistance and negativity, and that doesn't spread to other people that we're at home with or working with or whatever, you know. So that's kind of the gratitude practice, is just to attempt to express genuine gratitude to people. And if you don't feel it, don't practice it, you know, and that's okay too. If you really don't feel the gratitude, then just, you know, do something else.
Yeah. And I think but like you said, you have to, well, why am I not feeling the gratitude? Right. And I think that's the piece that I've learned from all the practice, is just to keep self-examining, like, okay, why am I feeling this way right now? What, you know, and look, I think sometimes it might not make sense then, but maybe 2 years from now it does. And like, oh, you know what? That situation happened. That's why. Right. And that's why I'm where I'm at now, where it's made me a better person because of this. And so, yeah, I think it's very interesting, and you do. I think you find yourself just more at peace, right? And but it was interesting when you shared when we were changing them to practices, because I was like, but now it makes sense, right? Because it's you're still going to catch yourself like, oh crap, why did I just get angry at that?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
well, let me figure that part out.
Right. Exactly.
And what's that trigger point?
Yep.
And can I be aware? And I remember asking you at one of our previous meetings, and during ERB when you met with us, we really talked a lot about labels and judgment. And so I remember I followed that up, because as I was digesting that, I was like, well, wait a second. We put somebody in a 9 box, and and we label them a good performer, or an underperformer, or a high performer, whatever. And so how do we do that? And you had shared like, well, it's just about more being aware, and so, naturally.
It's not bad or good. When it's just, this is where that person is at this moment to the best of my ability to perceive.
Yep.
And it's not when we say 9 box bad, 8 box bad, 8 box wrong, and 1 box good. Well, then we're judging, right? And I mean, if it's just okay, well, everyone falls into a different place, and we're attempting to strengthen our people and to reward the people that are performing well, and to elevate our talent. Then this is a process that we have to go through, and just accepting that is a process that's going to make the company stronger and more efficient is, you can do things without that, without the labels and without the the negativity or the overwhelming positivity. You can just present, hey, this is the data, this is the information, and be objective about it to the best of our ability, knowing that, hey, we have a function to perform here. We have a company to operate, and there's decisions that we have to make, or that will be made through us as information becomes readily available. I mean, oftentimes the decision itself is just, it's already made by the information. We just have to speak the words, and so it's I know that component of it can be difficult for people to wrap their head around with. And it can be an early speed bump to really understanding what acceptance means, for example, or what the practices actually mean. But once you're able to kind of understand, comprehend the full scope of it, then it's pretty obvious that that we have to do what we have to do when we have to do it in order to make the company as strong and efficient as possible, because what we're doing is collectively attempting to be as the best company that we can be, the most successful, the best version of ourselves that we can be as individuals and as a company. And that's a great thing to work for, and that is inspiring, and it's going to make other people want to come work for us, and it's going to want to make other people want to come shop with us, and they'll feel that vibe that we have of just genuine authenticity, and
they won't feel like, because I think it naturally would come out as if you do look at it as a true label, as, oh, this person's underperformer, they're going to feel that when you have that conversation, versus just saying, here, to your point, here's the facts, here's the data. I think they'll appreciate, right? And they understand it's coming from the right place, and it's, it's a business, and we sometimes have to make business decisions. But
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, good. Yeah. Well, what else? Anything else on your mind, either related to anything, practice-wise or otherwise?
I think just starting with the practices, I think while we're on that, just more of a curiosity. I thought I'm a kind of curious person. It's not a take that, most companies are going to take, right? Probably far from it. And I think it's a bold decision, but I think it's really your authentic self. But like you said earlier, you have 10 bosses. So I think, when you think of that, was there any anxiety as you started to kind of meet with the SVPs and kind of roll these practices out and kind of really kind of implement them and kind of move away from the traditional competencies, right? That, maybe aren't always as effective. Was there any pushback or any anxiety from like board members or others that like, what are you doing? What direction are you taking the company?
Yeah, we've had some of those conversations as a family and as a board for sure. They want to understand what it is that is being implemented
Yep.
and why and how it works, and so we've had conversations about the practices, and I've given them updates at the board meetings, over the quarters to just let them know kind of the mindset behind it, and in terms of the risk involved with implementing something completely different that's never been implemented before in retail, yeah, there's risk there. Yeah, I mean, I'm just very candidly, it's hard to. I guess I just look at things in a different way than a lot of people probably do, and there's some things that I can't unsee or unlearn or understand. And so when I'm leading and when I'm trying to be my authentic self, it just comes out, it's just the way that I look at the world. And so I think that we can all be, as business leaders, we can all be more present and more connected with the people that we're communicating with, myself included. And so if we're focused outward on, this person, this situation, we're trying to fix everything around us so that we're comfortable operating around all the people that we're operating around, and so we're hitting this thing with a hammer, and we're watering this seed, and we're trying to make ourselves as comfortable as possible so that we're only judging things positively, and so that we don't ever run into any situations or issues. But what we should really be doing, if we want to grow and we want to create a safe place for the people around us, is fix what's inside. And I think that I think that a lot of people have understood this over the centuries and the millennia, really, and that it's not about fixing everything around you. It's about understanding and quote unquote fixing what's within you, and so that you can operate within any environment, and so that you're not the one who is unconsciously creating all this drama and turbulence around you and between you and other people. And so it is an internal look. If we want a great culture, we have to do the internal work so that we're not doing that, I'm going to burn this, I'm going to shred this, I'm going to water this, this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, this is, it's, we can make change from a place of presence and understanding full perspectives. But if we're making change from a limited perspective of this is the way, and I'm not listening to anybody else, and I'm shut off, and this is what makes me comfortable, and so then we're making bad business decisions. And so if we want to operate a successful business, then this is really non-negotiable. We have to become the best versions of ourselves that we can be. We have to try to create the best culture that we can be. And I'm not capable of doing that, on a moment to moment basis, for eternity, and that's why they're practices. Like I can't do that all the time. That's not who I am. That's not authentically. I'm gonna have moments where I am reactive, and like everybody is. Everybody is gonna have that. Like it's an overstimulating world that we're operating in, and there's a lot going on in everybody's life. So I think that it just becomes very clear that if we're going to keep getting better as a company and as individuals, then we have to focus within. And if there's someone or something that just, isn't getting it and is a detriment to the business and is hurting the business, then of course, we're going to make change there. But if it's just a personality thing where this person drives me crazy, but they're doing a great job, then what is it about me that I need to have more acceptance about? Not how do I fix this person, because there's nothing wrong with that person. That person's themselves, and they're working on their own stuff. And it's not our job to fix other people. It's our job to look inward and fix ourselves. So I know that to be true. And when I explain that, and I know it from personal experience, and I know it from working with other people, and I know that it works, and I know that it helps people, and I know that it's helped me, and I know that it helps people that I've worked with. So, when I can articulate this to a board of directors, they get pumped up. You know, it's like they're go do it. You know, they're full support. So, I guess it's just kind of evolved over time. But they trust, they trust me until I give them a reason not to trust me, and that's how we should be with everybody. But recognizing people are going to have a bad day here and there too, and it's like, we can't always, be compassionate. Sometimes we're going to be overly transparent. Sometimes we're going to say things that people are going to take offense to. But then recognizing, okay, did I say something that was quote unquote offensive, or is this person identified as something that's causing them to resist and to create that defense, And so I've let go of I've been able to become a lot more transparent through recognizing that it's not really me that can offend people. People are really going to offend themselves by resisting what it is that I might be saying or that someone else might be saying. They're creating that resistance within. That's the accountability practice, right? Is recognizing, I'm creating this. There's no one else to blame. It's not his fault. It's not her fault. I just created this within myself. And so that's allowed me to become a much more transparent leader and a much more transparent person. And I think that's, that leads to people can see that as authentic and, that's what people want at the end of the day. As many difficult conversations as I've had with direct reports, at the end of the day, they know it's coming from a place of, of care for the business, care for the individual, care for our connection, and that we're all trying to make things better. So, I'd say it was risky. Hell yeah, it was risky.
But it's paid off.
But
right?
what are you gonna, But like, what am I gonna do?
Yeah.
Like, this is how I see the world.
Yeah. No, I think it's great. I think, I know we were talking about some Monday about the difference between private equity and private family, right? And so when you really do think about family piece, and even if I think back to this week's meetings, right? Like, I don't think if these are in play, we had the conversations with senior leaders, it would have been a download, right? And I think it would have just been, this is what we need you to do, go execute it. You're the stores and do what we say, right? So it does. I think it helps the culture, and I know you've said it. We have a great culture, but we can always work on it, right? And I think the biggest challenge for all of us is, how do we sustain it and don't let it go downward, right? And
can only sustain it now, right? That's the only time we can sustain it.
And yeah, that's cool. So, I think and it was amazing how much stuff, to your point, is out there on it.
Yeah.
Like that's what I think when the connection started happening, I'm like, okay, this is not just Matt talking about this.
Right.
There's a lot of people that talk about this. And what's interesting, it's all the same message.
Yep.
It's not, maybe somebody presents it in a different way, but it all leads back to the same ultimate message, right? Or description, definition, whatever you want to call it. So, I don't think I have any other questions. It just, again, really appreciate obviously the opportunity today, but just, I think when I was meeting our new VP of stores, Cammie had asked us, like, what are you most excited about? And I just said, to continue to have fun. Like it's for almost 5 years now, I'm just having fun. I felt like I was burnt out before coming here. And, so I think it's great. I think, your availability. I know we've exchanged quite a few different emails over different topics, and,
very helpful ones too. So thank you.
I think the willingness just to engage in that conversation, whether you do anything with it or not, right? It's just being, that piece is great, and everybody has, right? Just very appreciative of all the opportunities, and excited, for what we're doing right now. And it's awesome.
I am too. Yeah, very excited and very appreciative of you, Thank you. You're doing obviously a tremendous job operating stores, and I know that your store team is grateful for you as well because it's helpful to have a leader that you can both like and respect, and it just feels like our conversations over the years just keep getting better and better, and I keep learning every time we have a conversation. Whether it's you or the any member of the regional team it's always thought-provoking and helpful, and I think we're making really good progress on what we're working towards here as a business, and people are gonna jump on board.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, it's
guests and prospective employees, and so I'm excited about the future as well.
Yeah, and it's great. It's fun getting the name out there,
Yes.
right? And like you said, right, we're making sure people pronounce it the right way,
Right.
and all that. But because when I first came, no, not many people knew, and I think we've all worked. And if I'm on a plane or at a restaurant or at a hotel when I'm traveling, it's being able to tell people, and it's not really talking about it is about the business, but it's really who we are, right? Yep. And I think that's what will get people excited, both the guests and the people that work for us. So.
Yep. Well said. Yeah, we'll leave it with that, man.
Okay.
That was a great conversation. I really
appreciate
enjoyed
it. Awesome. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Yep.